Jumping Jesus on a pogo stick, it's time for full disclosure.
Full disclosure, news and commentary number 57. Why am I recording this? I just finished recording full disclosure, but I realized I forgot one very important thing. And as people, if people are going to continue to send me shit in the mail, I have an obligation to open it on full disclosure at least. So I'm going to record the opening now, and then I'm just going to lop it on the front end. So yeah, you're gonna have to hear me sing full disclosure news and commentary number 57 twice. Let's just get to this unboxing. It's not a t-shirt. What is that? And there is a note. And it says, "For your kids," with a heart. It's very sweet. For my kids. What is it? Masks. I'm glad I fucking recorded this. I'm going to put it on the front end. To whomever sent this, please take credit. People often take credit for this stuff only weeks or months after, or they want me to guess who it is. I really can't guess who it is. I will say by the handwriting on the note that it's probably a woman, because the handwriting's very nice. Or maybe a gay guy. Or maybe somebody who we all know is gay, but they don't seem to know it. We know who we're talking about there. Oh, Steve, not appropriate. Anyway, I can already tell you who's going to get what mask. This is going to go to my older kid. Yeah, she'll love that, because we're just talking about traveling around the country, and that's what this seems to represent. Awesome. And then this one will go for the inimitable Veronica. Anyway, thanks a lot, whoever fucking sent that. That's awesome. And now, let's get into me singing the song again. Full disclosure, news and commentary number 57. How's it going? It has been a busy-ish, it's been a busy morning. Obviously my laundry is done and folded. I just have to put it away, but I wanted to knock this out because a couple of mystery shopper jobs have come out, so I'm going to do that right after this. This is me post-workout and post-recovery and freaking meals and all that stuff, so I look like absolute garbage. Somebody pointed out, actually a couple people pointed out that I'm looking awfully scraggly. You're not wrong. Money is incredibly tight. If you want to donate to the Get a Damn Haircut Platinum Fund, you could just PayPal me below. Yay! Oh, that reminds me. I have to make a note about something. Rock on. Cool. Well, we've got tipping point tonight. And who do we got as guests? Larry continues his endless trend of getting interesting guests. And our guests tonight are James Caleb Kitchens, who's going to talk about a variety of things. I'm sure his podcast that he's doing in relation to Dark Side of the Ring, viral, raising all that money for the wrestlers that were supposed to be on their last show that was probably named after some kind of disease or something. Maybe it wasn't. They raised over $1,000. That's pretty awesome. The fans of Viral really coming through with that money for the boys. Apparently not all the boys accepted the money. And then some, like Matt Sells, took it and donated it and that kind of thing. All awesome things. Good for them. But we're going to have him, and we're going to have somebody that he badmouthed online, but then he rescinded it in Ryan Murdoch, the guy who runs Southern Violence and Honor. Having both of them on should prove interesting. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Of course, thanks to Brett and Brian and Dan and Derek and Diana and Jeffrey and Joseph Black, of course. Larry, not that one, the other one, Logan. Proc the Croc, Rob Rod, Southern Honor, Double Dropkick, and a special thank you to Eric the World Walker Viral Pro, Transcendent, and the OG Myron for your contributions to Patreon. All right, what do we got to talk about? Well, the commentary is going to be about when I went through a gap in my life of pro wrestling. I was running the WWA 4 school. A lot of people don't know that. This is more than 15 years ago. And then fallout, so I wasn't there anymore. It reminds me, I'm going to write it down. I'm going to tell that story on Patreon. A lot of people have been inquiring about Patreon. Yes, I do those videos. Yes, I talk about crazy stuff. What did I talk about last week? The insider stuff I had about WWE and what was going on there. Cool stuff. Don't talk about it here. I tend to talk about that kind of stuff there. And on Patreon, I'm going to tell the story of what happened at WWA 4 and why I was no longer there. But nonetheless, so I wasn't there anymore. So there was a few years gap before I could afford to buy a wrestling ring and find a place to put it up and start everything over again. And I'm going to talk about what I did, how I kept in the pro wrestling game in a way, and how it actually made me a better pro wrestling person, both a trainer, booker, and promoter, when I finally got a chance to do it all over again. That's our commentary. Let's talk about the news, such as it is. AEW Dark tonight, or today-ish, happening. Shawn Dean's wrestling again against Sammy, which Sammy's one of my favorite people who wrestle for AEW on the regular. Shawn Dean making the most out of his opportunity. If you listen to the thing that I did when I live broadcast my thoughts as AEW Dark was happening, I think Shawn Dean has the biggest upside right now in a lot of ways, and I hope he makes a good showing tonight. I won't be able to watch it because it comes on, I think, at 7 o'clock. It used to come on at 5, which was great. Now it comes on at 7, which is a bit of a pain in the ass because that'll coincide with Tipping Point, which will get my full attention, but I certainly will check it out afterwards. Dark Side of the Ring has done an amazing thing, which is, one, it tells these great stories from the past. And it has a lot of wrestling people talking, which is wonderful. It has done the impossible, which has gotten almost all wrestling people, and not almost, every wrestling person I've seen that has talked about Dark Side of the Ring actually agree about something. And that has got to be a fucking first. What did they agree? That Dr. D. David Schultz slapping John Stossel was fucking amazing. And the Dark Side of the Ring only exacerbated that opinion. And John Stossel could not have come across worse. I would say the two people that have done themselves little favor by going on that show, if what they were looking for was validation of their position, are Vince Russo on the fucking Brawl for All episode and John Stossel on that one with Dr. D. Holy fuck, did they come across as fucking douchebags. But AEW Dark, as great as that show is, and it's great, and should every wrestling person watch it? Of course. Is knowing wrestling history important? Yes. For me, and this might sound like bragging, maybe it is. There's been nothing that has appeared on AEW Dark that I didn't know or have a strong indication of already. That's because I keep up with this shit that I not only claim to love, but actually love. However, there's another series that has happened on Vice, that Vice has on demand, and they ran a little mini marathon of it today, which is reminded me of it. It's called The Wrestlers, and it's much more relevant for younger wrestlers to check out The Wrestlers, so you can see wrestling in the context of what you're doing. It might give you some ideas. If you haven't checked out that series, the one I watched in particular had featured like Leva Bates and Mia Yim, and also had a secondary story. The one on MVP blew me away. It was fucking unbelievable. You need to watch The Wrestlers. That is you need to go watch this shit tip of the show. Also, Billions, which is a show that I keep up with, that honestly, from a storytelling perspective, people should be watching. It's a fucking great show. But Becky Lynch showed up on the premiere. of this season that came out on Sunday, and she was fucking good. I'm shocked. I am legitimately shocked how good she was on that fucking show. Watch Billions from the beginning. It's a Showtime thing. Right now, a lot of people are getting Showtime for free, so fucking binge watch that shit while you can. And then check out the new episode of Billions with Becky Lynch. She was fucking great. We already brought up the haircut fund. Help a brother out. All right. What else we got going on? The big story is shows are happening. May 30th, Bushido, and I would guess Flatline, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Flatline is sort of the dark show associated with Bushido. Like, they feature a lot of newer people. Because I saw it was Flatline, Bushido, and Southern Violence. But then on Georgia Wrestling History, they only mentioned Bushido. Is it because Flatline is associated with them? I think that is correct. But they're doing a show May 30th, and they have a maximum seating capacity. But Bushido hasn't gotten close to that number in a while, except for the Matt Sells show. So I guess they're maxed out at 110. Hopefully they're taking all the necessary precautions. Yada, 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 whoosh. However, we'll see. We'll see what's going on with Bushido. And then Southern Violence is doing their thing in an outdoor show in conjunction with the brewery that they work with. The city's all on board. Athens is all for it. I would expect the crowd for that thing is going to be banana nuts if they're promoting it correctly, which I assume they are. And again, we're going to talk to Ryan Murdoch more about that tonight on Le Tipping Point. Commentary. The thumbnail, which hopefully I put that thumbnail up. What the fuck is that, Steve? Why am I in a suit? Because I look good in a suit. That was when I did Brawl. In 2003, when things went tits up with WWA 4, which I'm going to talk about on my Patreon again. Please contribute. Things went tits up. And I didn't get things going again until 2008. So there's a big gap there. But I consider that time I did wrestling shit. Why? Because I realized I needed to focus. And that I had skills that pro wrestling had afforded me. And I could now apply them. Brawl was the epitome of that. Where I had already been... My, at the time, wife was big in the theater community in Atlanta. And had frequently done things at a place called Dad's Garage, which is now much bigger, and they have a great building and all of that, which I have not seen. But they were doing this little improv show called Brawl. They had a main stage space, and then they had the black box space, which seated like 40 or 50 tops. And so they had done, if I'm correct about this, they had done Brawl. They used to do this 24-hour marathon improv thing where people were allowed to sort of try out new stuff. So they'd done this ridiculous thing where they put a camera on a ring and then had figures wrestle each other as part of this 24-hour marathon. It was just one little part, but it was kind of well received. So they're like, okay, we're going to do this Brawl show, which is going to be an improvised show that's centered around pro wrestling. And my wife had suggested, oh, you should get in contact with Steve. He could probably help you out with that shit. And this was when I was still doing shows at WWA 4 and running that school. So I said, sure, we'll help. And we kind of came up with this idea. Long story short, Brawl was a success on the black box space. They had done the final show of that season on the main stage. We packed it out, and it was an amazing sort of transcendent experience. What do I mean by that? I mean, if I was going to do Brawl, and at first it started off with whatever the main event was going to be, they had representations of all the Brawl guys in video game form, and then they would just let the video game play out to do matches, which was kind of a cute gimmick, but nothing you could do show after show, right? And so in the main event, that when the two people would face off to wrestle, They'd ring a bell, and then me and then one of my wrestling students would come in, put on their gear, and substitute and do a little fucking wrestling thing in this black box space, not a ring. And every week it had to get crazier and crazier, right? We had to up the ante. So sometimes we like fucking did chair shit. Sometimes the guy would fucking leap out of the crowd, and I would catch him out of the air and then fucking do a spot. Long story short, I broke a table I wasn't supposed to break because I figured like this table is so fucking solid. It had like this steel base and this thick wood. I'm like, there's no way I'm going to break this table. So jump out and I'll catch you and then I'll fucking choke slam you onto this table. Crowd will go nuts. I'll make sure I can land you in the bump safely. It'll be great. Long story short, that fucking table exploded. The metal base, kaboom. So they were pissed at me. And they sort of berated me like I was a little fucking child. And then I was like, fuck, we're doing this shit for free. They have to talk to me like I'm a fucking little kid. So I fucking said, you know what? Fuck this shit. I'm getting nothing out of this. Right? But then I thought, everybody knows I'm pissed. Everybody knows you're pissed at me. Let's make it into an angle. So I got to have my Kaufman, as I call it. And we convinced people that it was real. And I invaded their show and fucking smacked the living shit out of one of their improvisers. And people called the cops. Thanks to Brawl, I got to sit in the back of a police car. Not for the first time or the last. But I got to sit in a police car. And then somebody else was going to call the cops in the finale, where we did this thing where I put a couple of my wrestling students in the crowd, had them berate me as I was wrestling in the main event of the last show. And then I went up and beat the shit out of them. And then people in the crowd got so upset that they thought it was wonderful, right? What else did I do during that time? Well, they started filming a little documentary, which eventually would become The Booker. That happened during that time. I started doing voiceover work, which was amazing. I started doing fight choreography for theaters all over Atlanta. 6 different theaters in Atlanta I did fight choreography for. I did an XPW, which was a show where you do sort of experimental forms of puppetry. I came up with this whole fight choreography thing for that. That was very well received. I did this show called The History of Pro Wrestling with shadow puppets. I did storytelling shows where it was supposed to be international storytelling, and I knew a bunch of Japanese stories and Hawaiian stories, so I had a room for that and got paid for that. Long story short, what triggered this commentary was there are people that I get paid to advise, and then there are people who I advise because they're former students of mine or they give me money on Patreon. Then there's the people that I just check in with because I think a lot of them and I think they're open to listening to a little bit of advice here and there. And one of those folks said, I can't wait to start working again. And they're a manager. And I said, well, there's no better time to work than now. That's the truth. What do you want? I bring up, you should have goals all the time written out. What are you improving on right now? You don't need a ring to work on your strikes. Have you done that? You don't need a ring to cut promos endlessly, tirelessly, until you become great. You don't need a ring to learn and refine the art of storytelling. You don't need a ring to set yourself up for jobs once everybody's running shows again. You should be doing that now. The time I spent helping with Brawl, which provided connections all over the place, right? It set the stage for when I was able to do Academy Theater shows, which was the rebirth of PCW. And at those Academy Theater shows, guys from Porterdale would come and watch the shows and then wanted us to do something in conjunction with that city, and that turned into those shows. Masquerade, Actors Express, doing stuff with Atlanta Zombie Apocalypse. All of this happened because of my inclusive nature of who I let do the shows with my training and oversight. and the connections and things that I did to stay busy in the period where I had a wrestling ring and then I had one again. By the way, WWA 4, one of those wrestling rings is mine. I'm not blaming you, but long story short, one of those fucking rings is mine. Just putting it out there. Anyway, what are you going to do during this time? It's great that people are beginning to run shows, and then it looks like soon we're going to be going in some version of a live crowd. And hopefully things don't get to the point where we have to shut them down again for a while. But they may. But none of that has anything to do with this simple question. What can you do right now to put yourself in a way better position? Because that opportunity is most certainly there. And if you don't believe it is, you're a fool. And right now, as the cliche goes, there are people doing things to leapfrog you as we speak. That applies to people who are fucking finding ways to work out. If they're finding ways to work out and you are not, they're getting ahead of you. And there are people right now who are scheming to not only improve themselves, but get your spot on shows. So what are you going to do about it? Have a great week. This week I don't have the kids until Saturday. Makes me sad. But that does mean I'll be able to crank out more videos. Check out the links below. I got all kinds of them. And I will talk to you later. And see you tonight for Tipping Point. I'm not going to do a pre-show because obviously I've kind of done it right here. Have a good week, everybody. I'll see you soon. And I'm almost done with the Orange Cassidy versus Gorgeous George thing.